Adding and subtracting complex numbers is no more complicated than combining like terms. Because to add and subtract complex numbers, you just need to combine the real parts and the imaginary parts separately. So for example, to add negative 2 plus I and 6 minus 2I, I'm just going to put the real parts together, negative 2 plus 6, which is 4, and then the imaginary parts, 1I minus 2I, leaves me with a negative I. So 4 minus I would be my answer. Now with the subtraction, I just need to be careful to distribute that negative through the second set of parentheses before I do anything else. So that's going to give me negative 3I minus 4 plus 5I. And then I only have one real number here, the negative 4, so that goes in front. And then I can combine the imaginary numbers. Negative 3I plus 5I gives me a plus 2I. To multiply complex numbers, we're either going to distribute or FOIL, depending on how many terms we're working with, and then simplify using the fact that I squared is always equal to negative 1. Anytime we see an I squared, we're going to replace it with a negative 1. So here I see a binomial times a binomial, which means I need to do FOIL. So I'll have first times first, negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Outer is negative 3 times negative I, which gives me a positive 3I. Inner, 2I times 1 is 2I. And last times last, 2I times negative I is negative 2I squared. And then remember we said we always want to think of this as a negative 1, which means we really have negative 2I times negative 1, the real number of positive 2 on the end. And now we're just back to combining real parts and imaginary parts. So negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1, and 3I plus 2I is 5I. 4 minus I quantity squared. Remember, when we see that squared on the outside of a binomial, we want to think of that as 4 minus I times another 4 minus I, which means we actually have to do FOIL here. So first times first would give us 16. Outer would give us a negative 4I. Inner would give us another negative 4I. And last times last would give us a positive I squared. Positive since it's a negative times a negative. But again, we're going to replace this I squared with a negative 1. So we actually have minus 1 on the end. And then combining real parts gives us 15. And combining imaginary parts gives us a negative 8I.